The old warehouse district stood silent in the early morning fog. Marcus Chin gripped the steering wheel of his battered sedan, watching the rearview mirror for any sign of the black SUV that had been following them for the past 3 days. Beside him, his daughter-in-law Sarah pressed her hand against her swollen belly, trying to calm the restless movements of the triplets growing inside her. "They're kicking again," she whispered, her voice strained with exhaustion. Marcus reached over and squeezed her shoulder gently. "We'll find somewhere safe soon. I promise." 6 months ago, life had been completely different. Marcus had been a retired accountant living a quiet life in suburban Phoenix. His son David worked as a software engineer for a tech startup, and Sarah taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. They had been trying for a baby for 3 years, going through rounds of fertility treatments that drained their savings but never their hope. Then, everything changed with one phone call. David had discovered something at work, financial irregularities that traced back to his company's biggest investor. The investor had connections to organized crime, using the startup to launder money through fake transactions. David had gathered evidence, planning to go to the FBI, but someone found out. The night David was supposed to meet with federal agents, he never made it. His car was found wrapped around a tree on a deserted road, the accident scene too clean, too convenient. The police ruled it an accident, but Marcus knew better. His son had called him hours before, voice shaking, telling him everything. "Dad, if something happens to me, protect Sarah. They don't know about her yet. But they found out soon enough." Sarah discovered she was pregnant just days after David's funeral, not with 1 baby, but 3. The fertility treatments had finally worked, creating a miracle in the midst of tragedy. She had been at her first prenatal appointment when strange men showed up at the school asking questions about her. That's when Marcus made his decision. He couldn't bring his son back, but he could save his son's family. He sold his house, emptied his retirement accounts, and created new identities for both of them. To anyone watching, Marcus Chen had died of a heart attack, grieving his son. The death certificate was fake, but convincing enough. Now they were Tom and Linda Morrison, grandfather and daughter, running from shadows that seemed to grow longer each day. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in the passenger seat. The babies were active today, more than usual. The doctor at their last secret appointment had said everything looked good, but traveling while 7 months pregnant with triplets was taking its toll. "We need to stop soon," she said, rubbing her lower back. "I can't sit much longer." Marcus nodded, scanning the empty road ahead. They had been driving since midnight, putting distance between themselves and the motel in Albuquerque where a suspicious car had been parked outside their room. Every stop was a risk, but Sarah's health and the babies came first. He pulled into a small truck stop, parking near the entrance where he could see anyone approaching. The morning sun was breaking through the clouds, painting the desert landscape in shades of gold and rust. 5 minutes, he said. "Get what you need and we keep moving." Sarah moved slowly, her body heavy with the weight of 3 lives. Marcus watched her disappear into the store, then checked his phone. The encrypted app showed no new messages from his contact, a former FBI agent who had believed their story and was working to help them disappear properly. A semi-truck pulled in beside them, the driver climbing down and stretching. Marcus tensed, watching the man's movements, but he simply walked toward the store, yawning. Not everyone was a threat, Marcus reminded himself, though paranoia had kept them alive this long. Sarah emerged with water bottles and snacks, moving as quickly as her condition allowed. As she reached for the car door, she suddenly gasped, doubling over. "Sarah!" Marcus was out of the car in an instant, supporting her. "It's okay," she breathed, straightening slowly. "Just Braxton Hicks." The doctor said to expect them. But Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. They both knew that if she went into labor now, on the run, hiding from dangerous people, the situation could turn deadly for her and the babies. They got back in the car, and Marcus pulled onto the highway, heading west toward California. His contact had arranged safe passage to Canada, where they could start over properly. New names, new histories, a new life where David's children could grow up without looking over their shoulders. "Tell me about him again," Sarah said softly as the miles rolled by. Marcus smiled sadly. He knew she meant David. In their months of running, sharing memories had become their way of keeping him alive. When he was 7, he decided he wanted to be a detective. Marcus began. He would follow the neighbors around with a notebook, writing down suspicious activities. Mrs. Patterson next door was convinced he was going to get her arrested for her illegal rosebush. Sarah laughed, the sound lifting the heavy atmosphere in the car. He told me that story. Said it taught him to look for patterns in data. That's what got him in trouble in the end, Marcus said quietly. He was too good at seeing patterns. They drove in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts. The landscape changed from desert to scrubland, mountains rising in the distance. Somewhere behind them, dangerous people were searching, following paper trails and digital footprints. But Marcus had learned to be careful, paying cash, avoiding cameras, staying off the grid. His phone buzzed. The encrypted message was brief: package ready for pickup. Bakersfield. Sunset. That meant their new documents were ready: Canadian passports, driver's licenses, everything they needed to cross the border legally. Once they were in Canada, they would be outside the reach of the people hunting them. The FBI was building a case, but these things took time, and time was something they didn't have. Sarah dozed fitfully as they drove, her hands protective over her belly. Marcus thought about his son, about the grandchildren he would never meet. These 3 little ones would never know their father, but Marcus would make sure they knew what kind of man he had been. Brave. Principled. Someone who tried to do the right thing, even when it cost him everything. The sun climbed higher, and traffic increased as they neared Bakersfield. Marcus took an exit, following the directions to a nondescript office building. Their contact would meet them in the parking garage, hand over the documents, and they would be on their way. As they pulled into the garage, Sarah woke with a start. "Where are we?" "Getting our new papers," Marcus said, scanning the shadows between the parked cars. "Stay in the car, doors locked." He met her eyes in the mirror. They had made it this far by being careful, by trusting no one except each other. Just a few more hours, and they would be safe. Marcus stepped out of the car, every nerve on alert. Somewhere in this garage was their ticket to freedom, but also possibly a trap. He had to take the risk. For Sarah. For the babies. For David. The contact emerged from behind a pillar, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes. Marcus recognized her from the photos. She handed him an envelope, thick with documents. "Everything you need is there," she said quietly. "Border crossing is arranged for tonight. Don't stop anywhere else." Marcus nodded, clutching the envelope. "Thank you." "Thank David," she replied. "The evidence he gathered is going to take down some very bad people. These documents are the least we could do." Back in the car, Marcus showed Sarah their new identities. Canadian citizens returning home after a family emergency. The triplets were listed as expected in 2 months, with a Canadian hospital already notified of their arrival. "We're going to make it," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Marcus started the engine, pulling out of the garage into the bright California sunshine. They had hours of driving ahead, a border to cross, a new life to begin. It wouldn't be easy, raising triplets while maintaining their cover story. But they had each other, and they had hope. As they merged onto the highway heading north, Marcus thought he saw a black SUV several cars behind them. His hands tightened on the wheel, but he kept his speed steady. Maybe it was them, maybe it wasn't. Either way, he would protect his family. He had taken his son's place as protector, and he would not fail. Sarah began humming softly, a lullaby she had been practicing for the babies. The sound filled the car with a strange peace, a promise of the future even as they fled from the past. 3 little hearts beat steadily in her womb, unaware of the dangers surrounding their entrance into the world, knowing only the safety of their mother's body and the determination of their grandfather to see them born free. The road stretched ahead, leading to safety, to new beginnings, to a life where David's sacrifice would not be in vain. Marcus drove on, carrying his son's legacy forward, 1 mile at a time. The border crossing loomed ahead in the fading light. Marcus could see the lights of the checkpoint, the flags of two nations fluttering in the evening breeze. His hands were steady now, no longer trembling with the fear that had plagued him for months. "Papers ready?" he asked Sarah, though he had checked them a dozen times already. She nodded, holding the documents that would grant them passage to safety. The triplets seemed to sense the importance of the moment, their movements settling into calm rhythm. As they approached the checkpoint, Marcus saw the border agent step out of the booth. Young, professional, doing a job that tonight would mean the difference between life and death for their small family. The car rolled to a stop, and Marcus lowered his window, smiled calm and practiced. "Good evening, folks. Documents, please?" Sarah handed over their papers, her hand brushing Marcus's in a gesture of support. The agent examined the passports, glanced at the car's interior, noted Sarah's obvious pregnancy. "Coming home for the birth?" he asked conversationally. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. "Want the little ones born on Canadian soil." The agent smiled, handing back their documents. "Drive safe. And, congratulations on the triplets." The barrier lifted, and they drove forward into Canada, into safety, into a future that David had died to secure. Behind them, the United States faded into darkness, along with the hunters who could not follow across this line. Sarah broke down sobbing, relief, grief, exhaustion pouring out in waves. Marcus pulled over once they were clear of the checkpoint, holding her as she cried for the husband she had lost, the father her children would never know, the life that had been stolen from them. "We made it," she whispered against his shoulder. "We actually made it. David would be so proud of you," Marcus said, his own eyes wet with tears. "Carrying these babies, being so strong." They sat there in the gathering darkness, two souls bound by loss and hope, carrying forward the next generation. Tomorrow they would drive to their new home, begin building their new lives. Sarah would give birth in a Canadian hospital, safe and protected. The triplets would grow up as Canadian citizens, free from the shadow of their father's sacrifice. But tonight, they simply held each other and remembered the man who had brought them together, whose love continued to protect them even after death. Marcus had taken his son's place, becoming father and protector to Sarah and the unborn children. It was not the life any of them had planned, but it was the life they had been given, and they would make it count. The stars emerged overhead, brilliant in the clear northern sky. Somewhere among them, Marcus liked to think, David was watching, knowing his family was finally safe. The old warehouse district, the black SUVs, the constant fear, all of it was behind them now. Ahead lay only possibility, and the promise of 3 new lives about to enter the world, carrying forward the best of their father even as they began their own stories. Marcus started the engine again, pulling back onto the highway that would take them home. Home. A word that meant something new now, something built not on location but on love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds of family. They drove into the night, toward tomorrow, toward hope, toward the future David had secured with his life. The triplets stirred again, as if sensing the change, the crossing into safety. Sarah placed both hands on her belly, whispering promises to them, of love, of security, of stories about their brave father who had loved them before they were even conceived. And Marcus drove on, carrying his precious cargo, fulfilling the last request of his son, protect Sarah. He had done more than that. He had saved her, saved the babies, saved the future of their family line. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, but, for the first time in months, it felt like a road leading somewhere good. They had taken their son's place in the world and fled danger, but, in doing so, they had found something precious, the strength to continue, the courage to hope, and the love that would see 3 new souls safely into a world their father had tried to make better. As the miles passed beneath their wheels, carrying them ever further from danger and closer to their new beginning, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. They had made it. David's family was safe. His grandchildren would live. And that, in the end, was everything.